Well, my initial interest in television and film came from watching so many independent movies in the very early 90s. And I was always intrigued by simple storytelling that was done in a lot of movies like Sex, Lies, and Videotape, Clerks, Kicking and Screaming, not the Will Ferrell one, Metropolitan, all of these late 80s, early 90s independent movies. And I found out that the movie Clerks was made for $27,500, and it just made me feel like, wow, it's a very achievable thing. This is something that people like me can actually do. So that's when I began to look into how do I get into the industry. And at the time, I was going to school for getting a teaching certification, and I just kind of combined the two of them, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. My initial goal when I got out of college was to work in film and radio, which I did for a few years, but then when it became just way too difficult to make a living at that, my fallback position was to go into teaching, and it just so happens that a school like this was able to incorporate both. The best way to pursue any kind of career in film or any kind of entertainment, the best thing to do, and this is going to sound like a little bit of a vague or simplistic answer, but it's to just start making stuff. The more I talked about it with people and made like little short films, the more I would run into people that also did the same thing. Eventually, I ran into someone that I went to high school with that was starting a production company. In turn, he was hiring people that I was actually in college with to work on the crew, and that's how I got into film. I worked on 2 independent films for this little production company, Svezia Pinel Pictures. Both films were horrible. Only one of them actually got completed, and after that, I started working from those connections, I started working in Long Island News Tonight, and it was just a matter of making the connections. Teaching was a little bit different though, because in order to work in any kind of public school, you just have to be a certified teacher. And I was really just looking for work in general. I'd worked in another school before here, and I just wanted to stay here when I got hired because it just so happened to have a film and radio courses that I happened to have real work experience in. Just coincided that way, luckily. Well, luckily I enjoy it. Not every year has been great. You know, I had a string of years that were a little bit rougher than I care to remember, and I think that's just with any profession. I mean, I wouldn't say that was because of any one particular problem. You know, a few years ago, maybe I was burning out a little bit. Maybe the students were not as good as students I'd had for years before. It was a combination of those things and probably other things I'm not even thinking of. So not every year is a winner, but luckily, as difficult as the job is, it's still the best job I ever had. So the motivation to come here is that I don't hate it. I actually still like coming here, and I like, you know, doing stuff like this, interacting with students, and you know, it's I hope I'm not jinxing it, but it's been on a good streak for the last few years. Well, you've been here for the last few years, so you're aware of the lack of equipment that we get, which that's definitely a downside to it. The plus side, and this is, I don't mean to sound like having a little bit of an ego on this, but it helps that every year that I do it, I can get a little bit better at it. Like I can realize, all right, the students don't seem to be enjoying this part of it, so let me alter that so that the next year it becomes a combination of a little bit more enjoyable and at the same time something they can learn a little bit more from. So on one hand, I'm hindered by our lack of the lack of equipment that we have, which is I'm not complaining, it's understandable. But the other side of it is that by using the same equipment and doing very similar lessons year to year, I can improve upon them from year to year. It's not really that it's more difficult to teach it. The only frustrating part of it is that because the equipment's old, it breaks down a lot. The courses The big focus that I have in the courses is teaching simplistic storytelling. So the fact that we don't have computers that can do a lot of effects or cameras that look, record color as richly as other cameras, it's not the end of the world because the focus of the class is storytelling. The frustrating part comes from, anybody who has a computer knows the older it gets, the more it breaks down. Any kind of technical equipment, the older it gets, the more pieces of it that don't work. So that's the part that's frustrating. It doesn't really hinder the learning part, it just hinders the production part.
You said this stuff here is like, what, 7 years old?
10.
10 years
Our
old.
computers are from 2007. Our
Yeah.
computers are 10 years old.
Yeah.
No, I don't feel like the class is overlooked. To be fair, it's a communications class, and communications falls under the English heading, which doesn't have a lot of money. And it's not necessarily a frustrating thing, because I do understand that there are full other programs that are geared and budgeted for larger amounts of equipment. It just so happens that this school has this little niche program of communications, and the funding for it isn't very high because the English department doesn't need a lot of funding for it. So I don't really get frustrated at other programs as much. The frustration comes that so much time goes between getting some new equipment. So that's the only part that gets a little rough. When you say stigma, you mean like a negative?
There's a stigma towards like, oh, you can't find a job there.
Oh.
Like, there's no future there.
Yeah. I hate to sound pessimistic, but there's a lot of truth to that. I understand, like on parent-teacher nights when we have parent conferences, when parents say to me, I don't know if I want my son or daughter going into this. There's a part of me, and sometimes I'll even say, yeah, I understand, because it's something that, not that I have a ton of work experience, but I've worked in it, and I didn't leave it because I hated it. I left it because I literally couldn't make ends meet, and I was living with my parents. I didn't have a wife or kids. Like, I didn't have any huge expenses, and I couldn't make it work. And that was years ago. That was 20 plus years ago, when it was probably a little bit easier to find regular work than it is now, because things have become so much cheaper for production. You don't need large crews anymore. So I understand the frustration, I understand the stigma, and that stigma exists because there's a lot of truth to it. Now, it doesn't mean that a person shouldn't try to achieve their goals. I mean, there are people that make successful movies every year, there are new stars every year, there's new people making new careers every year. It's definitely doable. It's just there's so few that do it, that the odds of doing it they're just extremely low. And again, I hate to sound pessimistic, but it's just the truth. It's not very common to make a living in it. So I get where that stigma comes from. Putting money aside, because depending upon the area you go into, money is either going to be difficult or next to impossible. Like really successful directors, most of them don't have a lot of money, because they have to use their money that they make to put into their films. So putting money aside, the most difficult thing is just getting your foot in the door in a realistic way. I'll use me for an example. Like I said, I worked on 2 independent films. They were full productions, shot on film, shot on locations, shot across Connecticut, New Jersey, Long Island, and I was there for it. Of the 2 films, only one got completed, and when that one got completed, it got entered into the Tribeca Film Festival. And we premiered at Tribeca Grill, which is Robert De Niro's restaurant. And this was in my head. This was the foot in. I'd already worked a bit in the industry, so to speak, but I wasn't anybody. But this was finally a moment for me to get a film that I had worked on with my name in the credits, be able to be seen by other people and possibly hired by my production company, be hired by other production companies or by other studios to work. That's the hardest part, because even having that premiere, the film never even got sold, so nothing happened from it. So you can do all of the work, you could actually, and even nowadays, because it's so much cheaper with equipment, you can make full-fledged real films and no one will ever see them. The hardest part is getting into some venue, some festival, some anything that will get your name out there to actually be hired. That's a good question. It's a little rough because I don't really regret what I did. I don't know. I don't know if I would have to tell myself this because it's something I avoided, but a lot of my friends that stuck with it got into this pitfall. They didn't know when to quit. When I left, when I made a full-fledged effort to become a teacher, that was 1998, early 98. And at that point, I was a little depressed for about a year and a half because I felt like I just gave up. In hindsight, I did the right thing. And I have friends from that production company I worked with that stuck with it. They stuck with it for years. And on one hand, they tried to achieve their dream, which is great, but none of them were working in the industry, zero. And they maybe postponed some other possibility or gave up other possibilities that they could have been a part of because they didn't know when to throw in the towel. You could also argue maybe I threw in the towel too quickly because, like I said, I didn't have a mortgage, didn't have kids, didn't have a wife, didn't have any of the big expenses. I just felt like it wasn't going to work out, and it didn't. So I don't know if I'm really answering your question, but it's because it's I don't necessarily have a regret about it, but it was a rough decision to decide I'm quitting, trying to make this work. So I think I'll just remind myself that it didn't work for other people. It might be a good idea to quit when things start.
And what would you say to anyone who is interested in pursuing film as a career or any other art major?
The thing I always tell them is that school is secondary for this. I always recommend going to college for a career you would enjoy, because that's what I did. I went to college. My mom is a teacher. She recommended I get a teaching degree as a backup, and I did. And it worked out. It just happened to work out for me. And I always suggest to people, don't go to school for film because no one hires you for your degree. But now that equipment and production expenses are so incredibly low, I always recommend go to school for a career you can enjoy that will afford you time to make films. No one will hire you based on the degree you have when it comes to film, but if you can be comfortable doing some other career, and if you get discovered and something happens with your films, great. And if it doesn't, you'll be okay with that backup career. Things couldn't work out better for me. It's what happened for me. I mean, I'm in my backup career and I'm happy in my backup career. So that's the advice that I give. Especially, like I said, production costs have become so incredibly low that it's worth it for you to do something.
All right, that's it. Thank
That's
you.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem, man.